All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our next round of Trout in the Classroom webinar series. This will be our fish dissection video. Um, I'm going to go over a couple of quick things before we get started, and that will let anyone else trickle in that's waiting. But as we, I will, no, right now. But as you guys have maybe seen my face in some previous webinars, my name is Margaret, and I'm the Wildlife Education Coordinator for the Nevada Department of Wildlife in the Western region. And so today, like I said, we are going to be dissecting a trout. We're going to be learning about both their internal and external anatomy. Uh, so a couple of things I want to go over as we get started here today. So we are going to be, as I said, looking at both internal and external anatomy. This process is actually kind of similar to how you would clean a fish if you were going to eat it. If you caught it and you were going to eat it yourself, you'd want to get all the guts out of it. But we're kind of going to take those guts and we're going to take a closer look at what they do for the fish, as well as how it helps the fish function. It might be a little bit gross for some of us to see this kind of thing for the first time, but that's completely normal, and it's okay to think it's a little gross at first, but just know that all of these things we're going to learn about their purpose and what purpose they serve for our trout. So it's all going to be great stuff that we're learning that help our trout survive. If you guys, I will be asking questions along the way. And I would love for you guys to answer them or for your teachers to kind of respond with what the class consensus is to my questions. Please use the chat function to answer the questions that I have. And then if you guys have separate questions, you can go ahead and put those in the Q&A. So I will be kind of responding to the chat as we go through, as I kind of dissect this fish, and I'll be asking questions about what you guys think the purpose of certain things might be for, or what a certain body part is. So with that, please go ahead and put those answers in the chat, and then any additional questions you have, put those in the Q&A, and I will get to those at the end of the webinar once we are done with the actual dissection. And with that, I have removed most of the chat permissions. So please, everyone, be respectful. Make sure you're answering questions that are on topic. And we will go ahead and get started here. I'm going to share my screen real quick. All right. So as Jan said, you guys, in his email this week, you guys are entering that fry stage. So finally getting big enough to really feed and kind of see their real true fish shape. Now, this is what some of that internal anatomy and external is going to look like. We are going to be looking at a rainbow trout, so the same type of trout that you are raising. However, we're going to be looking at an adult fish, so a fully grown fish. And then this fish was given to me. I'll go ahead and stop sharing here. Just wanted to get you guys a quick peek. And I'm going to change cameras. So jump scare, you're about to see a fish. All right. Hopefully everyone can see that okay. Please let me know in the chat if there's any issues seeing it. I also will be doing this upside down, so please bear with me as I try to navigate that a little bit. So this fish came to me from the Mason Valley Hatchery. So we did see that hatchery Q&A tour, or the hatchery tour a few weeks ago, and on our webinar, and hopefully that one will get uploaded in the next couple of days. And if we didn't get to catch it already, but this fish came from our hatchery, so it is a place where they raise fish to be stocked in our local waters. Mason Valley Hatchery is located in Yerington, Nevada, about 45 minutes to an hour from here. So I went and asked the hatchery if I could have a couple of their fish for a dissection to show you guys what they look like and teach you a little bit more about them. So we thank this fish for giving us its life to teach us about more about our trout and their anatomy. So we're going to start by looking kind of at this external anatomy of the fish here. You can see that nice sheen on it. That is kind of that rainbow trout sheen, as well as a lot of trout have that kind of sheen color on them. It helps blind things that might be swimming by it. So this, as I said, is a fully grown fish. It's only about maybe 8 to 10 inches long. It's not too big, but this is about as big as they will ever get at the hatchery before they are taken out and stocked in our local ponds and rivers. So one of the first things you will notice about our fish is, let's see if I can get a good visual, but see, I have got lots of fun residue on my gloves here, and you can kind of see there's even some down here on the cutting board, and that is slime. And so fish do have slime, and I would love if you guys could answer in the Q&A and tell me what you think, why you think fish are slimy, why we think, what purpose might slime serve for a fish? Okay, so they can swim faster, I like that, through the water they live in. Okay, to protect them. Because of moss. Oh, these are all great answers. Let me see who, I think one class got it right. Let's see, ooh, to get through tight spaces, I like that. So Miss Macaluca's class nailed it with that it is for protection. So this slimy barrier on their skin does serve a purpose to protect their skin, not only from things they might bump along the way, but also from bacteria. So fish, it's very easy to pass bacteria in the water because fish are kind of taking in that water. And so just having these having the slime on them really helps protect their skin barrier from any bacteria, okay? All right, and a reminder to please make sure we're staying on topic in the chat, okay? Thank you. Now, the next thing you might notice on this exterior of this fish is this dark line that is going directly across the fish right here. It is on both sides of him, her, we do not know. This line right here is called the lateral line. And the lateral line is actually a specific thing to trout that actually serves as a sonar for them. So this line actually sort of works in conjunction with their brain to sort of serve as a sonar for defense of predators that might be nearby. So they sort of have a feeling or a sensitivity around this line that actually kind of can give them an idea of how far or close away a predator might be. And that allows them to get away from the predator faster, right? So this lateral line allows them to essentially, sort of like a dolphin might use sonar to find its friends more likely than a predator, but a trout is going to be using it to find predators and to locate it. Now, one of the last things I want to point out on their skin is the scales, right? So you can see some of them kind of coming up here. Yeah, you can kind of see them here along the lines as they're shining in the light there. Now, does anyone want to tell me what they think scales do for the fish as well? Breast armor. Help them blend in. Help them swim faster. Protection, move faster. Protection, attract mate. Awesome. Help the fish survive. Perfect. A lot of you guys are really spot on. So again, it is for protection. So not only does that slimy capacity make it really hard for something to pick a fish out of the water, scales are sort of, like someone pointed out, are going to be that armor for the fish. So they are going to protect it from hitting the sides, or if something's going to scratch at it, it's a little bit harder to grab onto those scales. The shine does have some deterrence for certain predators. It can kind of scare some off with the light if it kind of gets in their eyes, right? And Miss Macaluca's class actually pointed out something that I did not talk about yet, which is that they have a form of camouflage to help them blend in. So most trout have this, and a lot of other aquatic mammals have this adaptation as well. But our trout are actually camouflage. So I know they don't quite really look like it because that's not what we think of when we think of a typical camouflage. However, have you guys ever looked down into a river and noticed how dark the water was, right? And that's because we have rocks and things disturbing the light underneath the water, which makes it really dark. So if you're looking down in the water, it would be pretty hard to see this. Let's say it was a black looking river right here. You can barely see that, right? Now, if you are a bottom feeder and you are looking out for predators, maybe you're a little macroinvertebrate trying to scare or trying to stay away from trout. This bottom white right here is going to perfectly blend in with the light that, like when you look up in a pool or a river and you look up and you see the sunlight shining through on the surface, that is what will blend in right here as well for the fish. So anything underneath is going to camouflage with the sun. Anything looking down, this is going to camouflage with the bottom of the river. So that's why you see that really intense color change on our trout. All right. Now, next I want to talk about the different types of fins that they have. So we have a couple of different fins that serve some different purposes, but we'll talk about what the fins do for us in a general sense. So back here we have our pelvic fin down here. This is what's known as the anal fin. This up here is the pectoral fin. Back here is the adipose fin. And then up here is what's known as the dorsal fin. Let me pull that to the side. We have our dorsal fin right here and our adipose fin. So one thing to note is that the dorsal fin typically is a little bit bigger than that. You'll notice on my diagram here, it's a little bit bigger. This one's actually not too bad. But what we notice is that with hatchery fish is we tend, because they are born and raised in those concrete pools, is that they tend to kind of scrape up their dorsal fin as they're kind of moving around those runners that they live in. And it doesn't harm the fish at all, but it is just something that we notice that by the time they're fully grown, these fins are just not quite as big as some. So if you go out and fish, you catch a fish and you want to know whether or not it's a hatchery fish, that is usually a great way to tell. All right. Now, last thing I want to talk about before we get into the inside. Right here is the mouth of our trout, right? I'm going to try and open that up a little bit. He was frozen yesterday, so we are still in our thawing process here. So we have our mouth right here. Now the mouth is predominantly used for eating and breathing, all right? So we're going to talk about how that works for a fish, right? Because fish don't technically breathe water, but they sort of do their own special version that's pretty unique to fish. So when a fish is trying to breathe or eat, all of it's coming in the same cavity, right? It's coming in through the mouth, the food or the water, or in most times for fish, both, because their food is in the water, right? So they're gulping down water and food. Now, what allows them to kind of delegate where that water and food goes in their body is through their gills right here. Now, does anyone know, before I get too far into it, where what purpose the gills serve for us? To breathe, oxygen, help them breathe underwater, breathe in air from the water, breath. Perfect. I think you guys are all mostly saying the same stuff. Filters oxygen. Ooh, Miss Caleras' class nailed it with that one. So our gills not only help them breathe, but they're very specifically absorbing the oxygen from the water. So what happens is they are taking in that water through their mouth, and then they are essentially going to shoot that water out of the gills here, out through these gills, and the gills that are right under here are going to help them absorb the oxygen from that water, that oxygen that they need to survive. So I'm going to go ahead and cut into the gills a little bit here. Now this right here is called the gill plate, or otherwise known as the operculum. And this thing protects the gills. So this is just this is harder than probably any other part of the fish right here. And this really and truly is like armor, just protecting these gills. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and remove my little diagram here. All right, so I have pulled out a gill. I will warn you, this is not the prettiest gill you're ever going to see because this fish was frozen for a couple of days just for me to be able to get it to the hatchery in here for the dissection. It has been a little frozen. So normally these are bright red. With a healthy fish, you should be looking for bright red gills for sure. That means they're full of oxygen, right? So they're looking a little brown like this. That just means they haven't had oxygen in a while. But this is what the gills look like. They're kind of they're described as a filament, and that is what actually gets rid of the carbon dioxide. It's sort of like a little muscle, gets rid of the carbon dioxide, it absorbs that oxygen, and that is how the fish is able to breathe. Now, if you look closely on the other side of our gill here, you will notice some really spiky, let me see if I can focus a little bit here. You will notice these really spiky little bone things. Now these are called rakers. And I want you guys to think, if the water is going in the mouth of the trout and they are absorbing the oxygen and sending out the water, what do we think the purpose of the rakers might be? And think back to what I said about how breath and breathing and food are the main purposes of the mouth. And so this helps us with important thing. Perfect. Some of us are good. Awesome. Awesome. So a couple of you guys definitely got that right. Oh, perfect. Ms. Conley's class just nailed it with that one. So essentially, this helps direct the food to go into the stomach. So when the water is being diverted right in here through the mouth, the water is shooting out the gill. This is absorbing the oxygen. And meanwhile, if there's any food in the mouth, we don't want that being sent straight out the gill, right? Because they need to eat the food. So these rakers are more on the inside of the mouth here, and they direct the food to go in the stomach. So by essentially having a couple layers of these rakers, there's several layers under here of those rakers. And that is what directs that food directly into the stomach and lets the oxygen go out. All right. So those are our gills. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start getting into our stomach anatomy here. Oh, but I forgot to ask when I was talking about our fins, I forgot a big one. What do our fins, what purpose do our fins, what purpose do the fins serve for the fish? What is the main thing that they do? Okay. So most of us are saying to help them swim. So absolutely, they do help them swim, right? That's how they swim through the water. But another big one is going to be stability for the fish. So the fins, to some degree, our water, especially in a river where trout are living, is constantly moving. They are usually going upstream, so they're using this big tail fin, the dorsal or the tail fin right here, the caudal fin, to they are using that to move through the water very powerfully. However, mostly the dorsal fin and the side fins over here help them stay stable in the water. So that's what helps keep them upright, keep them from kind of tipping from one side to another by having even distribution on either side. And I will really quick, before we get into it, I'm going to show you really one quick picture of what the gills look like here. And so this is a close-up picture. You can see those rakers. The arch is just what connects them, and then that filament is that muscly material. So that's a close-up of what the inside of those gills looks like. All right. All right. So we are going to get into the stomach now. I am going to start down here at the vent. This is where waste comes out of. And I am going to cut all the way up all the way up to the gills pretty much. Now, I'm also going to do a cut up. Another quick cut. Like I said, I'm sorry, guys. Doing this backwards. So, this way, just so we can get a good view. Oh, so I'm just going to take off that piece right there so we can get a good view of the stomach right there. I think it looks a little bit, that is all just intestines, that's not blood. So we're going to get into some of this stomach contents. This is a little bit of a smaller one, so I'm going to be careful. Try not to pop anything just so I can show you guys every piece of the trout, okay? Now, the first thing I'm going to pull out, let me, all right, bear with me here, everybody. Like I said, I'm trying to get everything out without popping anything. All right, so the first thing I am pulling out is this very dark red blob right here. I can do this without getting my finger. All right, so this big red blob right here, please put it in the chat if you know what this big red blob might be. So we are absolutely split between heart and liver. Those are both great guesses. The correct answer is liver. All right, everybody. Once again, please only be answering questions in the chat, okay? So this is the liver right here. Now, the liver helps remove toxins from the blood, okay? So it essentially, when the blood is moving through the body, this helps remove those toxins and gets rid of a lot of nasty stuff that we don't want in the blood. Humans also, this is the same purpose that our liver serves pretty much. Now, one more thing I want to show you guys on here. It's a little bit hard to see. Let me see if I can cut it off. Oh, okay. It kind of just exploded. But right here on the side, we have this really dark, kind of greenish little pouch right here. And that is what's known as the gallbladder. Now, does anyone have a guess of what the gallbladder does? A little hard to see, but there's a little dark blob in there. Bacteria out of food, digest food, breaks down food. Perfect. You guys are all on point. Um, so it does have to do with breaking down and adjusting food. The gallbladder is specifically what creates the acid for digestion. So to have the for food to be able to break down and get through our body or through the fish's body in this case, we need essentially acid to break down food and aid in digestion. And so the gallbladder here is what creates that acid to help the fish digest. All right. So that is our liver and gallbladder. I'm going to leave these over here. All right. Okay. So I'm going to pull out a lot of this right here. Again, without trying to break everything. Things are very close together here. All right. So one thing, point out here, doesn't quite look like a lot, but right here, oh, do this without getting too separated. This right here, that hole that is right there is known as the esophagus, okay? And the esophagus helps to break down food and it helps transport the food from the mouth to the stomach, okay? So after it is going through the mouth and those rakers are helping direct the food, it is going to hit the esophagus, which helps to break it down and then send it down into the stomach. All right. Now, this very dark tube right here, what do we think that is? The esophagus is taking food down. All right. Okay, so we had a couple guesses for intestine. It is kind of hard to tell them apart. So down here down here, this dark portion is actually the stomach, okay? So this down here is going to be the stomach of the fish. And so technically, if you wanted to figure out what your fish had been eating, you would be able to cut that open. The fish did a great job of doing that for itself, for me on its own right here. This dark stuff that you're looking at was in the stomach. But because it was a hatchery fish, we know that it was majoritively eating nutritional pellets. And so that is mostly what you're seeing kind of over here is these pellets really that were semi-digested by this fish, and some of them were left here in this stomach cavity. It does, I will say though, it does look a little bit more like what a human intestine kind of looks like, so I can totally see that. And that does lead us into the intestines, which sort of this section underneath here, this veiny portion under here that kind of wraps around. All of these intestinal organs are very wrapped, tightly for a fish. Now, this, as I said, this portion right here is the intestines. Now, the intestines help absorb, they help absorb nutrients from the food for the fish, okay? So this is what is absorbing those nutrients. It's getting broken down in the stomach. It's going through, not absorbing those. This is, as I said, nutrients getting absorbed in the stomach and then just digested out through the intestines and through that vent. All right. Now, one more really important piece that I want to see if anyone knows the name of, and I'm going to try and get it out, but as I am doing so, if you know the name of this, this is the body part that essentially allows our fish, I don't want to pop it, so I'm going to be careful with it. This piece right here, it allows our fish to help control their depths in the water. All right, perfect. Looks like a couple of us got it right. I just pulled it out, but I knew the air would probably fall out of it. But that is there's a little bit in there you can still see. That is, you guys are correct. It is called the swim bladder. And that is what helps control depth for the fish. So as it's swimming up and down in the water, it really can swim side to side easily, but they can let air in and out of that swim bladder, and that's what allows them to move up and down through the water. All right. Now, this little dark thing right here, if anyone knows the name of it. I'll ask if anyone knows the name of this. It's pretty close. It does look actually very similar to a fish heart. This, however, is actually the spleen. And so the spleen is connected to all of those digestive organs, and it helps to filter blood and helps with the immune system of the fish. So by filtering bad things out of the blood and supporting those immune system, those supporting the hormones in their immune system is where is all kept here in the spleen, which is located down here at the very bottom. All right. All right. Now we will get a little bit into the back here. But again, I'm going to try my best to not break it open here. But that is a very hard ask with this body part. So I will give anyone the opportunity to tell me what you think this is. This is an organ back here. This very dark thing right along their spine. While I'm cutting it out, I'll give you an opportunity to tell me if you know what it is. One class definitely has it right. It's gonna kind of come out in sections, it looks like. All right, that's a piece of it. But this is a really very small fish. It looks like we had one or two people get that one right. So that is the kidney. So the kidney goes all the way along the spinal cord of the fish right here. And the kidney helps again filter blood for the fish. And so our kidneys help keep our urine safe, help keep, the fish keeps toxins moving through and out of the body. And that is where their kidney is. So it follows all along that. Some people claim that breaking open the kidney can make your fish taste really bad. I don't have any personal experience knowing I've never had that happen before, but usually you don't need to really do all this. We kind of just pull the fillets off if you're going to eat it. But some people do say that about the kidney. All right. I'll show you a couple more things. We've got one. Very, very, very tiny. All right. Now, one of the last major organs I'm going to talk about today is this little one right here. Little but very mighty. Can anyone tell me what they think that is? Woo! Awesome. Most of us are getting that one right. A lot of us guessed that one earlier on because there's a lot of things that sort of look like it in the body of a fish. This is the heart. So this is a fish's little tiny beating heart. They're usually one of the ways I tell them apart from the spleen, besides knowing where they are, is that they are almost always a little triangle. They're like a little pyramid shape almost. You can kind of see that. So that is always how I tell the heart what it is. And the heart, like I said, it was located back here right behind the gills, because that's where the oxygen is coming in, right? And the heart is the motor. It is what pumps blood to the rest of the body. It does a similar function for humans as well. But it is the motor, it is the engine, it is the thing pushing blood and oxygen throughout our whole body. It pumps blood throughout the fish. So a very, very vital organ for our little fish, even though it is very, very tiny. All right. Now, the last thing I am going to show everyone is I am going to take the eyeball out to kind of show us what some special things about their eyeballs, if I can, but it is probably the most difficult thing I have to get out today. I'm gonna So I'm cutting out the eyeball of the fish. I know it's a little gross, but um, fish, especially trout, have amazing eyesight. So when they are navigating through these waters that are very, very dark, we have these, they have to be able to see, especially when the water is dark during the day, a lot of the time in the trout, especially in the Truckee River. And so at night, they have to be able to kind of see too and see predators. And one of the ways that they do this is through this really special lens that they have in their eyeball. And I'm going to attempt to get it out. It is usually very small. So that is incredibly, incredibly tiny. All right, so that is it right there. Actually, it looks like a little clear ball almost to me, like like a little bead or something. But if we think about it, our eyes, we have one lens. Now, trout here also really just have this one lens. However, because this is round, it allows them to essentially see 360 degrees around them. That is one of the most impressive and best things that they can do to keep them safe. So trout really are predominantly a prey species. So if we think about where their eyes are located, if we've ever heard eyes on the front, we hunt, eyes on the sides, we hide. And so they are generally a prey species. They have their eyes on the side of their body to allow them to see more predators. And then this is one of the main ways they're able to do that is through this really special lens they have on there. All right. So with that, that will conclude my main portions of our dissection today. And thank you guys all for participating and answering all my questions in the polls. And yeah, if you guys have more questions, I will be happy to take them on in the Q&A. I'm going to go through some of it because I think some of us answered the chat questions in there. So the brain, I will really quickly, I'm just clearing some of this out of the Q&A so I can see the actual questions real quick. All right. So I did see one question in the chat, is how big is the brain? The brain is pretty small. Part of the reason I didn't show it to you guys is because it is very time consuming to get to. I will try and real quick kind of head in there just to show you generally where it is at, but it is definitely most difficult organ to get to and a little bit time consuming. So I don't want to get too far into this. We'll go ahead and show. Essentially, the brain is under here, where most brains are located in the head. It just is a very, um, it's very attached to the skull of the trout. It's kind of just mushed up in there within a bunch of bone. So it's kind of hard to like really see. It doesn't have quite a firm like brain shape, but it's right under there, right behind the eyeballs. All right. All right. The organs grow with the fish, absolutely. So you guys have been raising your trout. You saw those egg sacs that the Alvin had on them. So that was providing them nutrients for a time period because they're not like mammals where we care for our babies for a long time. So those egg sacs allow them to get nutrients for a while. And then once they are starting to get into that fry stage is really when all of that anatomy is really getting fully developed and they are able to kind of hunt on their own and be a predator on their own. All right. Is the anatomy of a baby fish the same as an adult fish, just smaller? Yeah, pretty much. Just with the exception that kind of when they're in that alvin stage, they are very connected to that nutrient stack on their body. So that's where most of the nutrients are coming from. But they have kind of began to form that digestive system so they can still expel, but they're not really relying on this all of this stuff as their ability for to consume and digest food. They obviously do have to form the gills pretty early on, but relatively it's pretty similar, just they start to develop this stuff a little later on. Do the fish have bones? Oh, I didn't even talk about that. They have tons of bones. You can see a bunch of them sticking out right there. They have hundreds and possibly, if not thousands, of bones in their body. They're very, very thin. They're more kind of just to stabilize the muscle, but they have tons and tons and tons of bones. That's why sometimes it's common if we're eating fish to get a little fish bone in there. Are the eyes connected to the brain? Yes, they are. They are very close right here. This is the little eye hole, and the brain is right here, so they are connected. The brain, it helps power their vision, as well as helps with this sonar that they use and the and functions for keeping them away from predators, keeping them safe. All right, do fish have teeth? They sort of do, yes. It's not, depending on the size of the fish really is kind of what makes the difference for um, us humans or predators or prey really. This fish you can see, it's a full grown fish, but it's still relatively small. You can kind of see there's little sharp, jagged edges there. Let me see if I can really white behind it. Maybe you can kind of see there's like little spikes in there essentially. So they're teeth, but not quite what we imagine teeth look like. Ooh, can fish release gas, aka fart? I think so, yes. Jan might have a better answer for that, but I know essentially by changing their depth using that swim bladder, so going up and down through the water, they are letting air in and out essentially. So it is definitely possible that fish are full of air. And sometimes even when we go fishing and we take them out of the water for too long, they can fill up with air, and sometimes you can poke them or squeeze them and they will pretty much fart. So that's to answer that question. I think I answered, do organs grow with the fish? Yes, they do, just as that fish gets bigger, and they develop more of them as that need becomes necessary. Where would the eggs be in the body? So this one likely was well, hard to tell the gender specifically. The eggs, their reproductive organs are down here, and this is where the eggs would be kept too. What tends to happen is male and female fish will generally kind of look the same, like this right here. But what the only main difference is, you'll notice if a fish is pregnant, this portion down here of the stomach will be very full and it will be very soft. And so that is often how we kind of just tell whether or not a fish is carrying eggs, but they're typically kept down here where their reproductive organs are. Why do some fish have hooked jaws? So I think there is like different adaptive reasons for having hooked jaws. I know some of it with certain species, they are just very powerful, and that's the bone structure. To be able to eat a fish that's very big, they need to have a very strong jaw. So I know that hooked jaw comes into place with certain species and the size of the food they're eating and how big they're seeing. I don't know off the top of my head if there's more reason that there's that they have adapted to having the hooked jaw, but it seems to have been a good genetic factor for a lot of trout. So it must, maybe it is intimidating potentially. Um, if a fish breaks a bone, can it heal? I have a feeling that a fish, I don't know 100%, but I have a feeling that fish bones are not quite like ours, where they're going to feel an immense amount of pain if they were to break one of these. I think, they're very reliant on their skin, the sonar, the sensitivity, the sight to be able to stay safe. And so, if they were to bump into something, I would think it would be more of an impact kind of on their sensitivity than really their bones, because they're so small and thin. I don't think they really have much feeling or nerves attached to them like our bones that have a ton of nerves and veins and or nerves and blood and stuff running through them. Um, they don't quite have that same um, amount of feeling in them. What colors can fish see? So that is a very good but a very hard question to answer, because there is actually still a lot of debate going on about what colors fish can see. What we do know is that fish see differently at certain depths. So they see colors differently than we do. We don't know exactly, I think, every spectrum of what every fish can see, but we do know that they see colors differently than we do. And so that is why a lot of the time when if you've ever made a fly for fishing, you'll see some of them are imitating fish, but some of them look kind of funky or in funny colors, and that's because they're anticipating the fish seeing it very differently at a different depth. At a certain depth, light also really starts to decline, and so um, when you have a really, really dark, deep part of the water that's dark and hard to see, there's potential that they're seeing in ultraviolet, that they're seeing light colors, that they're seeing things differently than we are. Um, so it's not a sure answer. They see differently than we do. We know that, and we know that they see things differently at different depths than we do, but we don't know 100% what every single fish is actually seeing. There's a lot of debate on that, so there's a lot of cool research coming out on that, though. It's very interesting. Mm. So, do fish feel pain? Is an interesting question. A lot of people ask that one. I personally have never communicated, face to face with a fish and asked them, but I am under the personal belief that anything with feeling and sensitivity can feel pain. So, I have always been taught that fish do feel pain. They feel pain, they feel sensitivity, they feel the water around them, they feel all those things. So I have not heard really any evidence to support that fish do not feel pain. And why do fish have so many bones? Um, that's a good question. I think a lot of it is um, because they're kind of a more muscly animal, they're not as reliant on their bone structure, right? Like we as humans are very reliant on our bone structure. We're very reliant on our hands and our joints to be able to do things. Fish don't really have a ton of those, right? We don't have a ton of joints or, kneecaps or things like that going on here that affect the way the fish moves a ton. Because the bones are so thin, the bones are really just providing a lot of support for the muscles. The really important things are the harder texture around the head to support the brain and the eyes and the mouth, and then that operculum that we saw earlier, that hard piece that protects the gills. Those are the really important, hard structures on the fish. The bones themselves are really just more providing kind of support for the muscles as they move along. So with that, they have thinner bones, which means they need more of them. So it's I don't know exactly the number of bones in a rainbow trout, but I know there is enough and a lot due to them just needing to kind of move around and the bones needing to be able to move with them as they move side to side. They're very malleable. All right. With that, thank you all for coming to the webinar this week. It looks like I think that was about the rest of our questions for the week. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we will get this recording up hopefully today or tomorrow. And thank you guys for being wonderful participants and following along with my dissection. That was super fun. Thanks for being awesome hosts and not getting too grossed out with me. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Let us know if y'all are having any issues, and we will see you guys next week.